Hi guys, Dave here from Beaton Firearms with another digital optics review. This time I've got the OWL L3 LRF night vision scope. This is a compact dual digital night vision scope. It has a laser rangefinder, it has a built-in illuminator. It can be used during the day and at night, and I was really quite excited to get my hands on one of these. As a quick side note though, the recordings you are seeing from the scope are not quite the same as what I was seeing in the viewfinder. The digital eyepiece has a resolution of 1024 by 768 pixels at a 4:3 aspect ratio, whereas the video recordings have a resolution of 1920 by 1080 pixels at a 16:9 aspect ratio, so everything's looking a little bit stretched. The reticle's also not quite the same, my rangefinder information doesn't quite look the same, and, most importantly, you are not seeing the gyroscope, inclinometer, or electronic compass. These three features were fantastic. I really liked having them. It can be hard enough to judge your incline and your cant while shooting from a stable position during the day, let alone at night, so I think all digital night scopes should have these features. Next time I get my hands on one of these, I'll use the external HDMI port to record externally. This will show exactly what I'm seeing, including the menus and the zeroing process. The scope has a base level magnification of 6.5 power, with the option to digitally zoom in to 13 power. You even get a picture-in-picture option of 26 power, but I felt this left the viewfinder a little bit crowded. The laser rangefinder is one of the defining features of the scope, I think. It can be activated by a quick press of one button and is accurate out to 1,000 meters. I'm hopeless at ranging things at night, so having the distance displayed right in the middle of my reticle was very helpful. This feature left me able to call out usable information to my other shooting buddies all night, even after I was done shooting. The included illuminator is rated at 5 watts and comes in your choice of 850 or 940 nanometers. I'm currently using the 850, giving me slightly longer distance than the other, however it is slightly visible to most predators. The 940 is totally invisible, with the trade-off of covering slightly less distance. On paper these are usable to about 350 meters, however for good results past 150 I think you should use an external illuminator. Even a regular torch or flashlight will do the trick. These scopes also include a laser pointer, the purpose of which I'm not quite sure about. 6.5 power is a little bit too long to make use of one of these. However, my pet cats loved it. The scope is powered by one 18650 battery and a single 3200 mAh battery is included. An external battery charger isn't included, but you can charge the battery through the USB-C port on the right hand side. Charging it this way is a little bit slow and inconvenient, and I would recommend getting a spare battery and an AC charger. Battery life on paper is about 8 hours, in practice I found it to be a little bit less. Under the rubber cover next to the USB-C port, you can access the micro SD card slot, and this is how you can update the firmware of your scope. I believe this model can use up to 128GB memory cards, although I found my 16GB to be more than adequate. There's a short section of Picatinny rail on the left hand side of the scope, and the rubber lens cap is moulded to fit into this quite nicely. You can also use this Picatinny rail to mount a red dot sight, which is what I think I would do. Focusing this scope is done with the focus ring at the front of the scope. This is a high quality, free moving helicoid system, and the photographer in me really loved playing with it. However, it was so free moving that the recoil of my 243 was actually shifting the focus. Fitting a muzzle brake to my rifle will probably fix this problem. The focus knob also became a little bit loose over the course of the night, but it never did fall out. And even if it did, it's not that important. You can also focus the front lens of the illuminator, but I found doing so sometimes interfered with the main lens. I didn't see much benefit, and I preferred to leave it alone. The scope is advertised as having a simple one-shot zero, but I found the process in practice to be a little bit more complicated. You would first need to shoot a group, and then open the menu, find the reticle adjustment feature, and move the reticle pixel by pixel until it's over the group you just shot. This may seem familiar to users of other night vision scopes, but I found it to be less user-friendly than simply shooting off some bags and turning the dials of a conventional scope. Your image will also freeze up as you start moving the reticle, making use of a rigid rest like a lead sled absolutely essential. Another problem I found was that I couldn't distinguish my hits on paper through the digital viewfinder. I normally zero my 243 at 100 meters, but even at 50 this was quite difficult. Using brightly coloured targets or shooting in well-lit conditions will be very helpful. I wasn't able to record this process internally, but next time I get my hands on one of these, I'll try and do a more detailed video. You have quite a lot of choice when it comes to your reticles, with different styles available in both yellow and red. The high resolution eyepiece leaves these looking quite fine and really nice to use. There's even an option to not use a reticle, which is a great option if you just want to film wildlife. Across the top of the scope are 4 multi-function buttons. A short press of the first button will change the magnification of your scope from 6.5 power to 13 power and back. A long press will open the video playback menu. A short press of the second button will activate the rangefinder, and distances will be displayed in the middle of your reticle. Holding down the second button will begin a video recording. Quickly pressing the third button will alternate between illuminator brightness settings. While holding it down will alternate between daylight colour mode and black and white night vision mode. The illuminator will only work during black and white night vision mode, which is what you would want. Quickly pressing the fourth button will activate the laser pointer, while holding it down will open the menu. While in the menu, the first button will allow you to scroll up, the second button will allow you to select what you have highlighted, the third button will allow you to scroll down, and the fourth button will allow you to exit the menu. There's plenty of customization available in the menu, including the picture-in-picture display, reticle adjustment, gyroscope, default magnification, default color, illuminator brightness, display brightness, rangefinder unit, audio recording, beeps, Wi-Fi, exposure, date and time, and format. I'll go through all of these in more detail in a future video. The AL L3 scopes can connect to smart devices via Wi-Fi. At this time of recording, I don't believe there is a dedicated app for this scope, but there are several aftermarket options available, and I'll revisit this when an app becomes available. Overall, I had a good time with the AL L3 scope. It's an impressive little unit with heaps of features. The rangefinder was fantastic. and even after I was done shooting for the night, I was able to call out usable distances for my other shooting mates. The biggest issue I had with this scope was the screws falling out of the scope base. This scope uses a 2-part cantilever scope mount, which screws directly into the base of the scope. I was very cautious about over-tightening these screws as I didn't want to strip the threads, and it's possible that I didn't tighten them enough. After about 50 rounds from my 243 and about an hour of driving around in the paddock, I found the screws were falling out, leaving my scope loose and pretty ineffective. On speaking with the distributors and the manufacturers, I'm the only person to have reported this problem. The torsion specs on the screws weren't available in the manual I had, and knowing just how many ugga-duggas to use probably would have helped. A couple of quick fixes for you guys would be marking off the screws to tell if they have loosened, and shortening an Allen key so you can tighten them in situ without having to remove the scope from the rifle. Another thing that I feel limits the appeal of this scope is the zoom range of 6.5 to 13 power. Naturally, different hunters like different zoom ranges, and I think 6.5 power would be quite good for shooting on foot or hunting from a fixed position. 6.5 power is also quite a good magnification for a rangefinder, and this scope can be used as a monocular and a rangefinder instead of just a scope. Personally, I prefer a much shorter 3 or 4 power scope while hunting, and I actually found myself missing out on a few shots, as my companion's 1.5 power scope was much more effective for him. The manufacturers have told me they're considering a shorter zoom range, so I'll let you know if that happens. That being said, I had quite a good time watching these roos at 6.5 power. Thanks for watching, guys. We hope this answered all of your questions about the new OWL night vision scopes. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop them below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for the next review.